This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Say Parshas Balak. Parshas Balak, a unique Parsha. Some Sofer says it's the only Parsha that Moshe Rabbeinu did not see with his own eyes, and was, in other words, it happened away from Klal Yisrael. It's not something that happened to Klal Yisrael. These are the inner secrets, the inner conversations between Bilaam and Balak. And in the beginning of the Parsha, we have somewhat of a very mysterious episode where Balak sends messengers to Bilaam, says that we're having trouble with these Jewish people. They're going to come, they're going to kick up our land, Kelchoi Chashar, Esav Asadeh. So Bilaam says, what do you want from my life? He says, I want you to curse them. You're good at that. You're professional Mekalel. So he says, I have to think about it. Let me speak to God. We'll decide. I'll let you know in the morning. Call me back in the morning. So Rebbeinu Shalom comes to Bilaam. He says, who are these people? Who are these guys that came to you? So he said, they're hiring me. Hashem said, don't go. Don't curse the people. They're blessed. So Bilaam gets up in the morning and he says, sorry, can't do it. They say, what's the problem? He says, I need a better entourage. I need better agents. I need better messengers. It's beneath my dignity to deal with such low people as you have sent me. So they send Bilaam another group of people, and then Bilaam says, okay, what should I do? So Rebbeinu Shalom says, you want to go? Hey, what are you asking me for? It's a great opportunity. Wait a second. Yesterday Hashem told him not to go. And then the next day, so now the Rebbeinu Shalom gives the green light. Last week's Parsha, Parshas Chukas, there was a red light, right? Right? You can't cross the red light. But this week, Rebbeinu Shalom says, there's a joke, come on. Right? And this week, it says, what? You want to go? No problem. No problem. And then what happens? Bilaam goes, and all of a sudden, he encounters a malach. And the malach is standing there with a sword. And the malach wants to kill Bilaam. Why does the malach want to kill Bilaam? Hashem just told Bilaam to go. Why is Rebbeinu Shalom, should he go or should he not go? This is like Abbott and Costello over here. Bilaam says, I want to go. Rebbeinu Shalom says he can't go. So Bilaam says, fine, I won't go. Then the next morning, Bilaam, oh, you don't want to go? No, go! So now Bilaam goes, and all of a sudden, he says to go. Now the malach wants to kill him. So Bilaam says, okay, you don't want me to go. If the Rebbeinu Shalom does not want me to go, I won't go. The malach says, no, who said we don't want you to go? Go! Huh? What in the world is going on? Here the Bilaam is being confronted by the malach, and the pasuk says, I would have killed you. So the malach says, why are you hitting your donkey? So Bilaam says, I'm sorry, chatasi, lo yadati, I didn't know you were there. So the malach said, what's your problem? Why are you delaying? Go. I mean, it's like every time Bilaam wants to do one thing, everyone's telling him to do the other thing. At first Bilaam wants to go, Hashem says, so Bilaam's not going to go. The next morning Hashem says, why aren't you going? Go. So he goes, now the malach tries to kill him. Bilaam says, I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't go. No, you should go. What's going on over here? And what exactly is this wall? Every time Bilaam is going on the road, he has problems with the wall. Why is he having problems with the wall? We know the first time he went, he had problems that there was a wall on one side. The next time, there was a wall on two sides. The next time, there was a wall on all three sides. I mean, that's what's stopping the man. The guy's the biggest magician in the world. He's the biggest sorcerer in the world. He could turn you into a frog. He could turn you into a chicken. He can make you, right? If a mentalist on a Matzah Shabbos, Malava Malka, could make you think you're a chicken, then Bilaam could turn you, he could make you disappear, he could make you stand on your head. No wall is getting in the way. If Houdini could get out of whatever he got out of, I guarantee you, Bilaam could get beyond the wall. That's the big problem, the wall. So put in GPS, alternate route and go, or have a good idea. Go around the wall. You ever hear of that? Go around the wall. Why every time? The first time there's a wall on one side. So go on the other. Now there's a wall on two sides. There's a wall everywhere. What's this business? What's this trouble with the wall? There's a very interesting Tosfos in Masechta Tainis and Daf Ches. The Gemara talks about the importance of emunah. And the Gemara says a mashal. The Gemara mentions the mashal very brief. It just gives code words. And Tosfos and Rashi there elaborate. It's a story about the weasel and the pit. The weasel and the pit. What's the story? The story goes like this. The Tosfos brings down, there's a Maisa. There was a young lady, and she was on her way to her father's house, and there was a pit. And she fell into the pit. And a young man came, and he said, "You look like you're in distress, right? Is there anything I can do to help you?" "Get me out of here!" "Yeah, there's something you can do to help you." "Get me out." He said, "No problem, as long as you agree to marry me." And they swore to each other that they would marry each other. He swore to her he would not marry anyone else. She swore to him that she would not marry anyone else. But they said, "And who will be the witnesses that we will keep both ends of the deal?" So there was a weasel passing by. You know what a weasel is? Like a rat. There's a weasel, pop goes the weasel. And they say, you know who the Edom will be? The pit that you fell into and the weasel. Okay, sure enough, they agreed to marry each other. Many days pass, and she, being a little naive, she decided to keep her end of the deal, thinking the guy would definitely keep his end of the deal. He doesn't remember it. He doesn't care. And he marries somebody else. And they have 2 children. What happens to the 2 kids? First one falls into a pit and dies. The next one gets bitten by a weasel and dies. The wife says, this is Lamala Manateva. Why is this happening to us? It's very strange, out of the ordinary, that both of the children should die Misa Mashuna. And he reminds himself of the story, and he tells her the story. She says, "I'm out of here, get rid of me, you have to marry that lady." And sure enough, he divorces her, and he marries the other girl, and the story ends happily ever after. Says the Gemara, if you put your trust in a weasel and a pit, they're going to come through for you. All the more so if you put your trust in the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Rebbeinu Shalom will come through for you. So we see from here a principle. And by the way, this is the source about the severity of an engagement. Why is an engagement binding? Well, an engagement is binding is because once you give your word to do something, then cannot be broken, like you see from this Gemara. This is the makar that the place can bring down for the strength, the toikef of engagement, even today where there are no tenoim. But we see from this Gemara a principle, and that is, when you have edim on something, when you have witnesses on something, if somebody violates the deal, who's the first to exact retribution? The edim themselves. Yad ha'edim tiyabay barishayna. The pasuk in Chumash, the edim will be the first to exact retribution. So Rabbi say, to understand the Parsha, and to understand many episodes in Tanakh, we have to get a better insight into who exactly this Bilaam was. Rashi, in the beginning of the Parsha, on the pasuk, Linu pai halayla, Bilaam says, "Why don't you stay over at night, and I'll speak to Rebbeinu Shalom, and I'll see what he says." Says Rashi, why at night? Why Bilaam can only speak to God at night? Says Rashi, Ein ruach hakodesh shayra olav elav alayla. The Spirit only rested on Bilaam at night. V'chein l'chol nevi'ei ovdei kachavim. Likewise, all the prophets of the nations of the world. V'chein Lavan v'chaloim halayla. So too Lavan only communicated with God at night. Shenamar v'yavo Elokim el Lavan ho'arami v'chaloim halayla. God came to Lavan in a dream at night. Why? Because if somebody has a pilegesh, where it's a sort of an embarrassing union, you don't go to her only at night. So too, the Rebbeinu Shalom is not really too proud of the fact that he has to speak to these Rishaim, and therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom only comes balayla. So you see from Rashi that out of all the prophets of the nations of the world, and Rashi points out that they all communicate with God at night, Rashi refers specifically to two of them. And that is Bilaam and Lavan. And we also know they both happen to have come from the same nation. They both come from Aram. Lavan Ha'arami. What does Bilaam say? Min Aram Yancheni Balak. Okay. But here is the real whopper of the Shiur. And that is, comes Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, who was written by none other than, not Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, not by Yonkos, but it's a Targum. The Chida writes, Targum Yonasan ben Uziel was just the printer's convenient way to refer to it. The Gemara says in Megillah, Yonasan ben Uziel wrote Targum of Nevi'im. Targum on Ksuvim, he also wrote, he wanted to be Megala, but they didn't let him be Megala on Ksuvim. And Targum on the Chumash is Onkelos, but there's something called Targum Yerushalmi. And there are two versions of Targum Yerushalmi. In order to distinguish the two, they gave them names, Targum Yerushalmi, Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says, on this week's Parsha, Perek Chav Beis, Pasuk Hey, on the Pasuk, Vayishlach Malachim El Bilaam ben Be'or, says Targum Yonasan, Bishadar Izgedin Levas Lavan Ha'arami. They send messengers to Lavan. Who Bilaam?
Lavan is Bilaam?
Wow, right? Good. That's good. Good. You're hired, right? That's a big chiddush. It says the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel that if you want to know who Bilaam is the same old Russia that we remember from Sefer Bereshis. He's back and better than ever, and he's up to no good. Bilaam is Lavan. Deboy lemivlaya yasama beis Yisrael. He wants to destroy Klal Yisrael. Bar Ba'or, he's the son of Ba'or. Di'itapash misoygei chachmasei, who's a fool from walking in the ways of wisdom. And look how stupid he is. He doesn't even have Rachmanos on his own great-grandchildren. Because after all, if Bilaam is Lavan, sorry to tell you, but everybody has this, baggage in the closet that when you make a chasna, the Zayda, unfortunately, the Zayda is Lavan. And you're going to have that bracha, and people are going to say, Chubid with the sixth bracha. Lavan. Who's he? He's from the other side. Right? He's from the other side. But everybody, Lavan is the Zayda, whether you like it or not. He's related to Sarah, he's related to Rivka, and he's the father of Rachel and Leah. And look how foolish he is. He doesn't even have Rachmanos on his own Einiklach. Uveis Moisei bePadan. He's situated in Padan. He Pesar Ashmei Pasar Chalmaya. He was able to interpret dreams. Vihi Mizbanya of Aram, which is on the pras. So says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, you want to know who Bilaam is? None other than Lavan himself. So says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, now we understand his trouble with the wall. Because we know there's an old deal between Yaakov and Lavan. Eid Hagal Hazeh Ve'eda Hamatseva. We know at the end of Parshas Vayetze, there was a deal between Lavan and Yaakov that they're not going to cross the pile of stones and they're not going to pass the monument, the wall. To harm, by the way, to harm, no. To do business, yeah. Right? It's only to harm, only Lara. But to do business, you're allowed to pass. And they made a deal with the Gal, they made a deal with the Matseva. Right? If you take a look at the end of Parshas Vayetze, Eida Gal Hazeh ve'Eida Matseva im Ani layevar elecha zagal Hazeh v'ma'atol le'savar elai zagal Hazeh v'yasam Hazeh v'zos l'ra. Fine. So it says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, number 6. Number 5. Become Malach Hashem. The angel of God arose. B'doichaka d'mitzah, in a very cramped place. In a confined place. Beini chramaya, between the vineyards. Asar de'akim Yaakov v'Lavan oigar, the place where Yaakov and Lavan made a mound. V'kama, and a matzeva mitzvah mikah. It was narrow on this side. V'sachusa mitzvah mikah, and the matzeva was narrow on the other side. And Lavan was going to violate the treaty. He was going to cross the wall to harm. And we know when we have Eidim on something, who are the first to exact retribution? The Eidim. So since the wall was the aid, therefore the wall is exacting retribution. Comes along the Medrash Tanchuma on Parshas Vayetze, Eid Hagal Hazeh Zeh She'amar HaKosov V'atilchatz es regel Bilaam el hakir. The foot of Bilaam was injured by the wall. By the way, Rabbeinu Bechaye writes in Bereshis Perek Mem Tes Pasuk Yud Zayin that why was Bilaam a chiger? He was a chiger when he bumped his leg against this wall. Hagal hu hakir. Lefi sha'avar Bilaam es hashvua. Bilaam violated the oath. Shenishba liYaakov, that he swore to Yaakov shenemar. Im lo yisavar sagal hazev amatzev hazesora. Says the Medrash, the same sheet as Targum Yonasan Uziel. Ubilam ze Lavan. Bilaam was Lavan. And we know, right, we say in the Haggadah from the Pasuk of Mikra Bikurim, Arami oived avi, the Arami, Lavan wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael. When did Lavan ever want to destroy Klal Yisrael? He just wanted to knock off Yaakov. Where do we see he wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael? This week's Parsha. He's trying to destroy Klal Yisrael. Right? Ve'al shabikesh l'Klal Yisrael nikra Arami. Lachein nifra hakir mimenu. Therefore the wall takes revenge. Lefi shehu ha'ed al hashvua, because the wall is the witness for the oath, and this is a fruition of the pasuk Yad ha'edim tiyaboy barishayna. Okay. I'm very surprised how cell phones could ring when they're turned off. It's amazing. It must be witchcraft or kasamim or black magic. It's mamish and yana diyayma. Wow, Baruch Hashem, it fits right into the share. Okay, look at number 7. Okay, says Targum Yonasan and Uziel, another detail of this idea, says Targum Yonasan and Uziel, that this Bilaam that we're learning about, we're saying he goes way back in time. He's Lavan, yeah? So that means he must have lived. He's living in the Midbar. And he lived quite a while. That means he was living in the times of Yaakov Avinu. That's Lavan. Now Lavan was the father of Rachel and Leah. He must have lived a couple hundred years. Well, what was he doing in the meantime? I mean, between the episode that he made a deal with Yaakov, and then Yaakov goes down to Mitzrayim, and now we're in the Midbar, what's he doing all this time? What's he doing? Investments? We don't know anything about what's Lavan doing to keep himself busy. Well, says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, we have to look at the Makkah of Barad. We know that in the advance warning of the Makkah of Barad, Rebbe Shalom gave a certain hasra that, listen, hail is going to come down from Shemayim, bring your animals inside. So the pasuk says, the ones who feared God, listen, and they brought their animals inside. The ones who did not fear God, they did not bring their animals inside. So Targum Yonasan ben Uziel wants to know, who exactly are these people who feared God, and who are the people who didn't fear God? So it says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, Eiv, Dahava Dachel Mipiskama Dashem, Eiv, who feared the word of God, May Avdoi de Parai, from the servants of Parai, Kinash Yas Avdoi, he gathered her servants inside. V'yas Geisa and his cattle, Lagoy Beisa, indoors. In other words, you want to know who the Yoreis Devar Hashem is? Eiv. And you want to know who the Lo Yoreis Devar Hashem is? Ubilam Deloy Shave Libe Leviskama Dashem Ushevak Yas Avdoi. Who is the quintessential Lo Yoreis Devar Hashem? None other than Bilaam Harasha. In fact, Balaturim says, on that pasuk, the ones who were being stubborn and not listening to the word of Hashem and advising Paroi not to let them go, Oidcha mistoilel ba'ami, they're still being rebellious, says the Balaturim, Rosh Eitevos, Bilaam, Shal Yadoi Eincha Meshalcham. It's because of Bilaam that the Rebbe Shalom did not send him away. The Gimel Hayu v'Oisa Eitzah. There were 3 people in that Eitzah. We know when Paro didn't know what to do with the Jewish people, right? He had the Jewish problem, so he consulted with 3 people. Who were they? Bilaam, Yisrael, and Eiv. And Yisrael advised, don't touch him. Guard him like the pupil of your eye. And Eiv kept his mouth closed. And Bilaam advised to destroy them. Hava neschak malai. And many, many years later, Bilaam sees Yisrael, and Yisrael is standing on the top of the world. He's being honored. He's living with the Jewish people. He has a great amount of respect. He's at the summit of honor. And Bilaam wonders, I can't believe it. Can't believe it. We were just together in the same room with Paroi. And I gave advice, and you gave advice, and look at you and look at me. I am now an oisvarf. I'm a nothing. I'm despicable. I'm ben ba'ar. And you're tzaddik shalaylam. So the question is, by the way, this is just tangential. The question is, what was Bilaam so surprised by? Yes, they were both together, but Bilaam made the wrong decision, and Yisro made the right decision. Bilaam advised Paroi to destroy Klal Yisrael. Yisro advised Paroi not to touch him. So why was Bilaam so surprised exactly? What was so startling to Bilaam that Bilaam is now a Rasha, Marusha, he lost his Chelik Olam Haba, and Yisro is sitting in the summit of the world? The answer is, very often in life, you have two people, they're in the exact same situation, and from one little episode and one little decision and one little turn of events, they were both together. They were both probably thinking, you could be sure what was going through Bilaam's mind, well, maybe I should give Paroi good advice not to harm Klal Yisrael. Maybe Yisro was worried, if I give this advice, it's going to be harmful to me. And they were both going both ways. And from one turn in their life, Bilaam ended up a nobody, and Yisro ended up the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's what Bilaam was so startled by. Is it possible that from one turn of events can make the biggest difference in your life? Okay. Now let's think for a moment. What was the end of Bilaam? What happened to Bilaam? He was killed. In Parshas Matos, look at number 9, coming up, 2 weeks, right? There's Malchei Midian, the kings of Midian, Hargu al Chalaleim, they were killed on the sword. Es Avi, v'es Rekem, v'es Sur, v'es Chor, v'es Reva, Chameshas Malchei Midian, v'es Bilaam ben Ba'ar, Hargu b'charav. Bilaam was killed by the sword. Says Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, another Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. What exactly happened to Bilaam? Says number 10. V'yas malchei midyanoi ketola ketule masher yasoin yasevi v'yas rekem v'yas sur hu Balak. Sur is Balak. V'yas chur v'yas reva chamesh malayim v'yas Bilaam ba'ar ketolu b'saifa. Now says Targum, let me tell you a little story how Bilaam was killed. When Bilaam saw Pinchas running after him, it's a problem. When you see a guy like Pinchas who just took a sword and stuck it right through Kozbi Basur and Zimri ben Salu in one fell swoop, he got both of them like a shish kebab, but it wasn't a piece of basar, it was two human beings. So what are you going to do if you're a Bilaam? He runs for his life. He did not want to be shawarma, right? So, Avad Milsa de Kusman, he did some witchcraft. Uparach ba'avir shemai, and he started flying in the sky. Right? You can just imagine, he's on his broom flying in the sky. Min yad idkar Pinchas. So, Pinchas mentions Shema Rabba v'Kadisha, the holy name of God, and Pinchas is after him. That would be... Yeah. So here you have Bilaam flying through the sky, and Pinchas is flying after him. Va'achte bereshe, he grabs him by the head. Va'achte, and he brings him down. Shlaf saifa, he yields his sword. Uba lemikta, he wants to kill him. So Bilaam starts davening. He says, Pasach pumim mitachni, he starts supplicating. Mamar Pinchas, im tikayim yas nafshi, if you save me, mishtab nalach, I swear to you, d'chol yoyim danakayim lesanam alati yas amach, I'll never curse these people. Onei ve'omarle, no way, I don't believe you. Haloi antu lavan arama, you're the wicked Lavan. You chased Yaakov down to Mitzrayim. You wanted to destroy his children. And then after we came out of Mitzrayim, listen to this. Garesa behind Amalek Rashia. You provoked Amalek. You want to know who provoked Amalek? Bilaam. By the way, you have a pen? Can I borrow this? If you write the words Bilaam and Amalek, okay, this is extra feature today. Bilaam and Amalek, you write those two words. Bilaam, Amalek. You also get Amalek, Bilaam. See that? Bilaam, Amalek. Bilaam, Amalek. And there are all kinds of endless combinations that you can make with the two words, Bilaam and Amalek. So there's who provoked Amalek? Bilaam himself.
How did he do that?
What?
How did he do that?
He convinced them.
We spoke to them?
I guess so.
You mean they didn't do it out of their own...
It says in this Targum, Yonasan and Uziel, Uchadain is gerasa iskar lamel yas, and then you wanted to curse them. V'kivin the chamitz lahanyanoi vadach l'kamen Hashem minach imlichas malka bisha yas balak l'mukma yas benazre. When you saw you weren't being successful, then you situated the women of Moav to be mezaneh with Klal Yisrael. And now, and because of that, how many Jews died? 24,000 Jews. And now you want me to have Rachmanas on you? Says the Targum and Uziel. Umin Yad immediately shalaf saifam into Yaakov Akale. He unyielded, unleashed his sword, and he killed Bilaam. He said, "You're the same old Rasha. You're Lavan who tried to destroy Yaakov. You're Bilaam who provoked Amalek. You tried to curse us. You were the one who gave the Eitzah about the Arayos, and therefore Pinchas killed Bilaam with what? With a sword." Hey, wait a second. I thought the Eidim need to be first. Yad ha'edim tia by barishayna. So we understand he hurt himself on the kir, on the gal, on the matzeva. Says the Rosh, listen to this, in Parshas Matos, says the Rosh in Parshas Matos, V'yas Bilaam ben Ba'ar ha'koisem hargu b'charev. Shamati, I heard, where did that sword come from? You see, when you make a treaty, you don't just say, whoever passes by the wall, whoever passes by the mound, to do harm will be violating the treaty. You take a sword and you stick it in the mound. That's how you make a treaty. Well, it says the Rosh, I heard, that sword that Yaakov Avinu stuck in the gal by the matzeva, that he made with Lavan, and he said, Mishayavar as Sabrisazos Isharei Yidokar Bechevisov Avnei Agal. So, in fact, that's what happened. Bilaam was crippled by the stones of the wall, and that's why the pasuk says Yad ha'edim tiaboy barishayna. He got skila, and then he was killed bacharev, like this pasuk says, V'yas Bilaam ben Ba'ar hargu bacharev. It doesn't say. Look carefully. Becharev. What does becharev mean? With the sword. The well-known sword. Which sword? The sword that Yaakov Avinu stuck in the mound. And by the way, if you look in Tosfos and Parshas Vayetze, the Dasakenim on the pasuk Eid Hagal Hazeh, Tosfos says, Noatzu charev begal le'edos. The Yaakov Avinu stuck a sword in. So all the various Eidim were the first to exact retribution from Bilaam.
What's the rationale? Is Taka his grandchildren? What is it?
I know that. We need to bring him in and cross-examine what he was thinking.
Something the richness doesn't make a difference.
He said,
if you're such a signer, you kill your own mother. It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. So Rabbi Sai, one last point on this Indian. Comes along Tziyuni ala Torah, excuse me. Tziyuni ala Torah. And by the way, there's a whole, we could give a shiur just who the Tziyuni is. It's one of the Mekubalim. Chida mentions it in the Shem Agdolim. Rav Moshe has a tshuva exactly, do we know who he is, we don't know who he is, and so forth. But the Chida does quote him as one of the Achronim. He brings down on the wall between that Bilaam was harmed on, Goder Mizeh v'Goder Mizeh, says the Tziyuni, the Fidas HaMekubalim, that the Rishonim come back again, says the Tziyuni, this is a fruition of Yad Ha'edim Tiyabai Barishayna. And what is this analogous to? The Chulda and the bar. This is like the weasel and the pit. That just like when you make Edim, when you make the weasel an aid, when you make the pit an aid, doesn't matter how much time passes, doesn't matter if you forgot about it. Ultimately, Yad Ha'edim Tiyabai Barishayna, Bilaam was Lavan, he violated the treaty, and therefore he was harmed by the wall. by the gal, and by the sword. We fast forward a few hundred years. And there was a general by the name of Yoav. And Yoav was acting on behalf of King David. And he was looking to annex land to Eretz Yisrael. And we know David HaMelech was Moisif, Aram Naharayim, Aram Tsoiva. Aram. So Yoav comes to fight with Aram. And Aram comes out toward him. And they said, what are you doing? We are the descendants of Aram. We're from Lavan. You Jews, don't you keep the treaty? There's a treaty. You see the mound, you see the wall, you see the sword. We have a treaty. How could you violate the treaty? So Yoav stopped the army cold, and he went to David, and they went to the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin said, wait a second, yeah, we have a treaty. But when you have a treaty and one side breaks their end of the treaty, all bets are off. And therefore, kill them out. The treaty is off. They broke the deal. We could violate the treaty. Look at number 13. The Medrash Tanchuma says in Devarim, Oyis Gimel, Kishahalach Yoav im Aram Naharayim. When Yoav went to Aram Naharayim, Yatsu L'krasa, they went out to Amruloi. Atam Mibnei Ban Shal Yaakov. You are the grandchildren of Yaakov. Va'anu Mibnei Ban of Shalavan. We're the descendants of Lavan. B'harei Atnai Shalem Kayim. The deal is still on. D'chsiv Eid Hagal Hazeh. Kishashama Yoav Kach. When you have heard this, Chazar told David, Amar lo ma ta'omer. What are you going to say about this? Harei Tnai Shvas Yaakov. Miyad Yeshiva Sanhedrin. They sat down the Sanhedrin, Shushan Edu Salamid. Limdu v'amru lo, be'emes kachaya Tanai. There was a Tanai. Ela shehem avrum tchila. They violated it first. Bilaam harasha like kach amar. Didn't Bilaam say, you see, Bilaam was foolish. Bilaam identified himself in the beginning of his klala. He said, Min Aram yancheni Balak. Min Aram yancheni Balak melech Moav. L'cha ora li Yaakov. And by the way, in the times of the Shoftim, there was a man by the name of Kushan Rishasayim. He also enslaved us. He also harmed us. Like the pasuk says in Shoftim Parakim Vayavidu, Vayavdu Bnei Yisrael is Kushan Rishasayim. So therefore, says the Sanhedrin, they violated their end twice already. And therefore, all bets are off.
So what is Shiur?
What?
So what is Shiur?
The Medrash Tanchuma? So Rabbi Isai, comes the Ger Rebbe, the Lev Simcha, and he says, isn't it interesting then, that in this week's Parsha, Balak, Kemat, in every pasuk, mentions the following word. Yaakov, Yaakov, Yaakov. Mi mana afar Yaakov. Ma toivu oyhalecha Yaakov. He's constantly invoking Yaakov. Loi hibid oven bi Yaakov. Ki loi nachash bi Yaakov. Koyes yomar li Yaakov. He has like Yaakovitis over here. Every single pasuk. Why is he constantly mentioning Yaakov? Well, of course he's mentioning Yaakov. This is Lavan. He still has old cheshbon. He still has an old account with none other than Yaakov Avinu. And that is why comes the next Ger Rebbe, the Pnei Menachem, and he adds that Hashem comes to Lavan and he says, Hishamelecha pentedaberim Yaakov mitoivad ra. Don't say anything bad and don't say anything good. Now I understand why we don't want anything bad. But why did Hashem warn him, don't say anything good? Don't worry, Lavan has nothing good to say. But he was referring to, in the future, Bilaam is going to want to give us brachas. All these brachas in Parshas Balak, Chazal say, Na'atarois nashikois soinei. There's nothing more slobbery than the kiss of the enemy. There's nothing more disgusting than the kiss of the enemy. It weighs down on you. It's not good. You don't want a gift from the enemy. You don't want a blessing from the enemy. All the blessings of Bilaam, they're not good for us. So therefore, Rebbe Hashem tells them, look, we don't want your blessings, we don't want your curses. Al tedaber im Yaakov mitoy biyad ra. Comes the Haflah. And the Haflah also mentions this idea of the Medrash Tanchuma, Targum and Uziel, that who is Bilaam? Bilaam is none other than Lavan. He mentions it, the Haflah and the Panim Yafais mentions it in this week's Parsha, on page Kuf Lamed Daled, page Kuf Lamed Vav, page Kuf Mem. You know, one of the things that Bilaam says is, what the Rebbeinu Shalom is referred to, is loy ish kel v'chazev uven adam v'yisnecham. God is not a man that he'll be deceitful. God does not renege. What is that referring to? What Bilaam was saying is that God is not like me. I'm like a schizophrenic.
I'm like a what?
Schizophrenic. Yeah, why? Because the first time Lavan sees Rivka, what does he do? Achoseinu ad hayi la'alfei revava. By the way, does anybody know why at a chasna would you invoke the bracha of Lavan? Achoseinu ad hayi la'alfei revava. What was so special about that bracha? It's a very special bracha. Alfei revava. V'heim revavos Ephraim. V'heim alfei Menashe. That's the bracha of Moshe Rabbeinu. Where did Moshe get it from? None other than Lavan. V'heim revavos Ephraim. V'heim alfei Menashe. Is achoseinu ad hayi alfei revava. So he gave a bracha the first time. And then when he catches up with Yaakov Avinu, what does he do? He gives everyone a kiss. Vayenashik Lavan Mosav Vayevarach Esem. So the first two times, Lavan is proving himself like a Groiser Rebbe. He's giving out brachas. He's blessing Rivka, he's blessing Yaakov, and now all of a sudden, he wants to curse us. So the pasuk says, no. Loi ish kel v'chazev en adam v'yisnecham. God is not like me. I'm a flip-flop. Yeah? I'm a liberal Democrat. No, God is not like me. God is kel chai tzurenu. He doesn't flip-flop. If he gives brachos, then he gives bracha. Look at number 18. Says the Gemara in Sanhedrin on Daf Kufhei. What is the meaning of the word Bilaam? So Rashi says, Biloi Am, without a nation. He has no nation he belongs to. Davar Acher Shebala Am, he confused the nation. Ben Ba'ar Sheba al Be'ir, he lived with an animal. Tana, Hu Be'ar, Hu Kushan Rishasayim, Hu Lavan Harami. He is Ba'ar, he is Kushan, he is Lavan. Ba'ar, Sheba al Be'ir. Kushan Rishasayim, he did two wickednesses. One in times of Yaakov, and one in the times of the Shoftim. And what's his name? Lavan. Very interesting that it's out of order. First should be Lavan, then should be Kushan, Ba'ar. First should be Lavan, then should be Kushan, and then Ba'ar. Also, what does it mean he's these three people? Rashi learns Bilam's father was these three people. Ba'ar, Kushan, Lavan. The Yad Ramah learns that all these three people were Lavan himself. Lavan was Ba'ar, Lavan was Kushan, and Lavan was himself. So Rabbi, I want to ask you a question. How old was Bilaam when he died?
300 years old?
I don't know, we weren't at the Levi, you weren't invited. But how old was he? So, it depends who he was. If he was Lavan, he had to be about 500 years old. To live from the time of Yaakov Avinu, even before Klal Yisrael went down to Mitzrayim, all through Mitzrayim, going all the way through the Dara Midbar to Kushan Rishasayim, he had to been about 500 years old. The problem is, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, on Daf Kuv Vav Amud Beis, Amar Leha Humino Rabbi Chanina, a certain Apikoros, number 19, said to Rabbi Chanina, Mi Shmi Alach Bilaam Bar Kama Hava. You ever hear how old Bilaam was? Amar Leha, Rabbi Chanina said, Michtav Lo Ksiv. It doesn't really say explicitly. But since the pasuk says, men of bloodshed do not live out half of their years. And we know the lifespan of man is how long? 70. That means the halfway point is 35. And Risham don't even live half their years. So he was either 34 or 33. So the Min said, you're right. You're saying good. Because I saw in his diary, I got his smartphone, and in his diary it said that Bilaam died at age 33 a cripple, when Pinchas killed him. Says Rashi that this opinion that he died at 33 obviously does not agree with what we just said previously, that he was Lavan, and he was Ba'ar, and he was all these Chevra, because according to that, look at Rashi, Rabbi Chanina lesled Rab Simai, who said earlier, Shloisha hayu ba'isa etza. Right? We know Bilaam was one of the advisors of Paroi. Because if Bilaam was an advisor of Paroi, then he must have lived at least 210 years, because he was at the Eitzah of Kalab ben Ayiloid. And the Targum says that when the Gemara says, Hu Ba'ar, Hu Kushan Rishasayim, Hu Lavan, it's a Pella. Because that means that Bilaam must have lived 500 years. But the Gemara says he only lived 33. So says the Targum, when we say that Bilaam was Lavan, was Kushan, it doesn't mean he was him. It means they were mishpacha. They were family. By the way, I believe the Rosh says the same thing. Look at the end of number 11. It may not be the same person. It just means they were from the same family. They were mishpacha. By the way, it's interesting. Who are these three chevra? Kushan, Lavan, Be'ar. Ois, Rashi Tevois, Kelev. Dog. There you go. That's all you need to know. Says the Shlach Kadosh, this week's Parsha. You want to know what Lavan was? You want to know what Bilaam was? He's a dog. Kushan, Lavan, Be'ar, Ois, Kelev. So how are we going to counteract that? What's the antidote to the Kelev? Vashem Beirach es Avraham Bakoil, same oisios, Kelev. But you rearrange it, Bakoil, so that's why the whole Parsha, Lavan is always trying to be Oiker Klal Yisrael from their roots. Right? Min Aram Yanchini Balak. I see Esan Moshevecha. If you look in the Rashi points out that Bilaam was unable to uproot Klal Yisrael from their roots. Because here's the battle between the Kelev and the Bakoil, says Ben Yoyada on Sanhedrin Daf Kufay number 23. But Ben Yoyada also says they were not the same person. They were definitely not the same person. They were Mishoira Shechad. They had the same root. They had different bodies. They were good. They were not. Says, look at number 23. Da, the al tachshav dvarim kipshutan. Don't think the Gemara means like the simple pshat. Sheshloisha elahim guf echad. That all three guys over here are one person. Dezelo yitachen. It's impossible that Lavan is Bilaam is Kushan. And the Arizal says beferish that Ba'ar, the father of Bilaam, is the grandson of Lavan. What Chazal mean is they come Yisharish Echad. There were three gufim, Kalecha Bizman Acher. The Ikra, the Sharish, was Lavan, and Kushan and Ba'ar came from them.
So they all goofed, in other words. They made a big goof.
Yes.
They had the same DNA.
They all goofed.
Okay. Says the Ben Yoyada, they all came from the same root, and that is why they are listed out of order. Why are they listed out of order? Because he says it's not listing them in the order of their existence, but rather in their root, in their inherent essence. And that's the order that's mentioned in the Gemara. Comes the Chassam Sofer, and the Chassam Sofer ties it all together. Says the Chassam Sofer, then it comes out that the entire Parsha, the entire episode of Bilaam going to curse Klal Yisrael is predicated on one thing. There exists a long-standing treaty between the Bnei Yisrael and Bilaam and Lavan, whether he could cross this wall and this mound and this sword to harm. For business he could go. So Rebbe Shalom, he goes to Rebbe Shalom, he says, look, they want me to curse. Could I go? Rebbe Shalom, of course you can't go. You have a deal. You swore to Yaakov, you can't go. So Bilaam says to Rebbe Shalom, okay, I won't curse. I'm just going for business. So Rebbe Shalom says, oh, you're just going for business? Im lekroi lecha bo anoshim kom lechitam. Im lekroi lecha. Says Rashi, lecha. If the kriya is shalcha, you think you're going to make money from it? Because there's no problem. You're allowed to go. You remember the terms of the agreement? You can't go to harm, but you could go to make money. No problem. So now, listen carefully. The Rebbe Shalom knows what's going on in Bilaam's mind, but God allows a person free choice. Rebbe Shalom doesn't act based on a person's machshavos. But once Balaam wakes up early in the morning, and what does he do? He saddles his own donkey. A guy like Balaam, someone of that level of prestige would saddle his own donkey. Why is he doing that? Says Rashi, the only reason he's doing it, his hatred is distorting judgment. Hatred for what? For Klal Yisrael. So now his actions are revealing that he's not going for business, he's going to harm. So the Malach comes to kill him. So Bilaam says, look, I retract, I'm not going to go to harm. So the Malach says, fine, no problem. As long as you go to do what I allow you to do, then you could go. No. So it's not that we're going back and forth. The question is, what's Bilaam going to do? If he's going to go curse Klal Yisrael, this is a violation of the treaty. If he's going for personal risk, business or pleasure? Business, there's no business with Klal Yisrael. You want to go for your own good? No problem. Bottom line is, according to the Gemara in Sanhedrin, how long did Bilaam live? 33 years old. Says the Sefer Pardes Yosef, if Yad Ha'edim Tia Boy Barishayna, he's crippled by the wall, he's crippled by the gal, he's killed by the sword. At what age? Gal, at the age of 33. Yad Ha'edim Tia Boy Barishayna, Lavan Bikesh Lakas Sakara.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.